This Sunday on Eye on Dependency, the journey into the 1970 mutiny continues. We remember those who refused to take up arms.
You gotta give me a number, you know.
You know my number?
No, boy. But I see the man face and the new one just wouldn't come to me. Who used to call Raja in the book again?
Those who refused to heed the warnings.
Tall John, Ken Tall John. Thank you very much, brother. All right.
Hello, folks. We're gonna go.
You missed it.
Gonna be
The
starting very
story of
shortly.
the hunter and the hunted.
The actual shooting and finding the camps wherever they were. General and myself were the ones like the hunter.
If you are a student of history, then don't miss Eye on Dependency, where every life is a biography. This Sunday from 6:15 p.m. exclusively on I-95.5.
People see a lot of things, so out of respect, you know.
To repeat it, tell someone.
This represents the Trinidad and Tobago Armed Forces Veterans Association. Just paying respect to because of the program we're doing now, you know. I'm a member of the Veterans Association, so
Sundays at 6:15 p.m.
just making the connection here with the jacket.
Radio, I-95.5 FM.
So they made the regiment fall, almost to disgrace. They tried to make the army look small, all over the place.
Right, so this evening we have just an exciting program for you. Interesting, and again, because of the history of this event, you know, we think that we thank you very much for, you know, wanting to be part of this historic, I'm saying historic, Lord, historic occasion. Now, it's, today you'll hear from Lou Jones again, part 2 of Lou Jones, and he will set up where the, you know, what really caused this thing to escalate in Tetron. There are a number of things that happened, and he'll give you reasons in his testimony this evening, and then we'll hear from a man who stood up and said, no, I don't know part of that. And he's going to tell you, he's going to take you through his steps, what he experienced. And we want you to, you know, just walk with him as he's explaining what he saw as a staff sergeant at the time. So that's Salandy, Wendell Salandy. We haven't heard from him at all for a long while. Then, by popular demand, John Jobe is back, the gorilla hunter. We're going to play his story again. And then we have Raffique Shah. Raffique Shah takes us through the steps of his case. So we have it here. So you'll hear how the trial went and how they won, because they eventually won. And of course, he will also have a response for Raffique, for the Commissioner of Police. It's a Gary Griffith. You know, this week it was a huge talking point about the comments he made. So there was a short response from Mr. Shah to the Commissioner of Police. So it should be an interesting evening. You know, tell all you who you can tell, share the live, and let's start this part 3 of this wonderful journey. I seen something on the screen I don't understand. Did that, everybody seen that?
What's up?
Those ads that popping up.
Oh.
Huh? Call short man again as usual. Huh?
I seen recording going on here, but what you on the page to see?
There is always some strange phenomenon
I will call short, man.
every time we come here.
Stand by. That's all.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to our Independency, right here on I-95.5 FM. Thank John Benoit for holding it down from 2 to 6, and we are going to take it from here and continue the education, part 3 of the military's role, the mutiny, or well, the military's role in 1970. They played their part. And good evening, Natasha.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Good evening, and welcome to our Independency again. We did say last week that we would not be covering this topic, but it has been overwhelming support and, clamoring for the material, the content that we're providing. So we're going to continue again this week. We'll hear from a couple new voices, some familiar ones for those who missed it the last time. And also, I think, look into what we're going to do today. What we're going to hear from some people today is what some of the grouses were in the military itself
At the time.
And this was one of the reasons for the unrest, unsettling, contention, discontent that a lot of soldiers were experiencing in the days and weeks and years leading up to 1970.
As usual, all we ask is for you to think. Our tagline, where every life is a biography. So we have lots of biographies coming up with all of this here, this series. Tobago, we have not forgotten you. There's no one in the chair right now, so we can't speak an empty chair. Once that settles, and you get your new chief, then we will subject, right? But we have not forgotten you. We are going to take care of that issue. But we, as I said, we want to take you through the steps now, and all we ask you to do is think. Get your pen, get your paper if you have to take notes, and document what you each of the first time. Lou Jones is going to take us through now some of the events he felt that contributed to the build-up of this, everybody just losing their minds eventually. And so he's going to tell that part of the story and continue with giving you an insight of what took place on that day. Mr. Salandy, Colonel Wendell Salandy, will, for the first time on national radio, I suspect that he's going to say why he refused to join the movement. He wanted no part of it, and he said so.
He was a sergeant at the time.
Gutsy move, very gutsy move, because you talking about swimming with sharks now, and anyone could bite you at any time, and he just insisted, well, I take and bite, but I'm not going to disrespect my oath. So he stood his ground, and so Colonel Wendell Salandy Rock, as he's fondly called, you'll hear from him as well. By very popular demand, the guerrilla hunter John Jobe, Captain John Jobe, you will hear, for those of you who missed his testimony, and some of you said the music was a little loud, so you will hear the testimony now, word for word. And finally,
we hear from Raffique Shah. As you may know, we spoke to him live on air the first occasion, but he called us, or we called him, and we got a little more information about the trial and the defense that they put forward in their case, and why they won their case of mutiny.
One magic word was used in that court, and they were free men, and he has a response to the Commissioner of Police.
Response to the Commissioner of Police, who said some unkind things about him and his objectives, his and Rex's objectives, and what he thinks that they have done to the institution. But so he will respond in kind.
All right. So without further ado, let's start the education going once again. And also, we have some tips for those who are struggling with addiction right now, and some families who are dealing with some addicts in their home. And we ask that any member of the Protective Service to tune into our Independency, because especially the young ones, they must know their history. Okay, so without further ado, let's go to our first testimony here this evening on our independency. 3424 retired Staff Sergeant Lou Jones. He has some interesting things to say.
Wendell Shah was two good officers towards us, you know. The intentions were good. I don't know how far it was going when I was hearing all this power talk and all this takeover and all these different kind of talk from some of these soldiers there and guns for the brothers. But it kind of had me thinking if it was connected with politics, they were going to take over the country, because I'm kind of finding it funny why they even go camp up in. But coming out of 1970 and all the negotiation, we get back to Surrey, everything was going good. But prior to that, soldiers was in real problem. After a major internet was the white man, he was the OC. After he resigned, because the problem was that he was the most senior major, and his job service was leaving. He was the OC that wanted to take over, and he had a role in that, and he resigned. So after he left, and Colonel Johnson take over. Now, Colonel Johnson, I believe, was just a because he had other officers who were not trained like Raffique Shah, like Luke and Goddard. These were the officers that training like in Sandhurst and Mons and these places. So they were looking at the army like a job. These private soldiers get any problem and you go to them. They had, from the time they start taking over after all the white men leave, you find they start getting on in this way, and then there are a lot of senior NCOs who were obeying the instructions to push a private soldier. Another hand, I had one or two senior NCOs who sided with them. And what's pressure right through. The soldiers show the ground in the luncheon from till December, months before. And they take it all. Instead of they do that, they start to put pressure. It's our essential Tuesday and Thursday. They check in here for everything. The boots not cleaning up, your hair not blowing up. So all these kind of things building up. Then you had Sunday morning church. You find if you're a soldier and you're a Hindu or a Muslim or whatever, you have to come to church. I remember one guy said, he went to the OT, he said, I'm a Presbyterian and I just go to church with my family every Sunday morning, so I don't have to come up here to go to church. Tell him, no, you have to come. And he didn't come, and they charged him and gave him consignment to barracks. So regardless of where you're coming from, you have to come in Ketron to go to church parade. Last fall and them in the negotiation stop all that. They make better conditions for the soldiers. Now, it wasn't making it easier for soldiers. You see, more drill would make them more disciplined. But you have seen it for three things. Your boots dirty, your shirt missing a sleeve, and a haircut. They call it the RP. So it's getting a style now that every time you're paraded with the RSM drill, you line up with your rifle and its own, and RP is standing by. Take them away. The men kind of get afraid to go on the RSM drill. They start reporting sick. They start saying if you get sick leave, you're staying in camp. They care if you're married or if you're married. All that was against the regulations. And now once married men stay in camp, they lose their rational allowance. So all these things that build up. And these people in authority wasn't seeing that. And we used to get a little consolation from people like Wendell Shah. They were officers who be interested in men. And when you talk to older heads that are telling like Goddard and Luke and them, they don't want to hear Shah and them at all. So they had a split. And when they split, they said they're militant. So the morning I heard that they were separating them, and they realized the state of emergency, they say they will save the time. Because they had it planning, immediately planning for some other time. After that, I know they went to take over the company office. But these two officers, I always say, they were good officers. Different from the others, different. I think they should honor them for some reasons.
What was their relationship with Colonel Luke?
Nobody didn't like Colonel Luke. He was the quartermaster. He wasn't a popular officer. Goddard wasn't so bad, but they had people like Charlie Hall. He was a good officer to the men too. But not Luke. He got out and he wasn't down there. He was down there at Mashram now. He was living on the hill. Then soldiers they went and loot the whole house. Because they went looking for him. He and the family they split. They take the radiogram, all the music, and they bring it in camp. And they play music whole night with the look radiogram, you know. I remember in the morning you're waking up, you're in office ready singing. This was soul music right through. The camp is well breakdown. There's not nobody you telling you what to do. In the 6 parade now. Well, they know most of the men are faking it, but they don't care. You're going sick, you're going sick. You have to
So you
have
want
a
to go
small
line
pack.
95 on
When
our
you're washing
Facebook
and
page.
shaving, keep in the small pack if you're going sick. So they're making sure everybody have that, and they have you standing up outside the MI room or under the mango trees. Line
Yeah,
up
the name of the
before
page
you're
or
going to see the doctor. Corporal and sergeant checking the men and to see if it's
But your
missing
Facebook
anything.
information is what?
And
What's
if
your
it's missing anything,
dependency?
they charge you.
Dependency,
So you're going by the
EYE
doctor.
on dependency.
When you
EYE.
finish the sick parade from by the doctor giving you full duty. You have to go and get dressed and go
EYE.
orders, because you're charged for not having the right thing in your kit. Half of the men going in the company office going on OC orders. The other half have a dress now. If you don't get no disposal like excuse drill, you're going to be drilled. So all that special soldiers get it. You insurance for your paper, and you want to know why the toilet paper finished so quick.
A
Because
Gmail.
you're getting that free from the store. He stand up and showing you the different layers of toilet paper, and telling you here is two, and telling you this is what you should use when you go to the bathroom. So this is supposed to last them a month. It's against the left person because you have the authority.
This is Facebook account, right?
You can abuse that authority. And then there are some seniors use this for supporting. All that stuff you break down in discipline.
Yeah, well, I
The
put
same
in
thing
the
reading on the orders, what you're supposed to
Right,
do.
what the password
And
they
you
know.
have to comply with it. And look
Well, the
at the
password.
support
Reality
that.
Radio
And
10.
Dr. Baino?
I don't think so. When I call
Right
it,
now. Capital C, capital R.
You
Capital
see the
R.
light,
Capital
I
R.
say yes. You have to take a tablet, you want to give a tablet, so ease my nerves. I tell you, I don't want to close the door. Next thing you go on by the
Capital
next door.
R for radio again?
I'm going to say Dr. Bino.
You space or nothing, right?
Bino, hold up. After that, you hear Dr. Bino coming and go for nobody, no
Right, I'm
medication.
thinking
All
that
before that, when you speak to everybody, getting the same thing. Even two, three,
No, he
sulfatide
wanted
tablet. You hear everything,
to because they had seen on an alpha
you
page
very
right now.
little thing, sulfatide tablet. And everybody had that pack of it in the car. When getting started for having medication and all that. The negotiation that they had, it turned out
Where's the
better
account
for the soldiers.
Where's the account itself? The email account itself?
Increased salary.
At gmail.com or something?
Yeah.
You think removing Seret would have exacerbated the whole ill will and
Yeah.
fear among
Right.
men?
I understand
Right.
that it was some political thing why they moved Seret, because it's from people
see,
in the
you
army
wanna
and they
try
decided to
something
move
there.
him, Because I remember
But the
they had
account is
this
what?
one
irondependency at gmail.com.
and everybody falling.
Well, is that what happens to type in there? I type in irondependency.
For some magical reason,
Yeah.
every time we come, we get no. They know I do, I want them to hear now. I'm really upset about this. I've been all the time.
Like, take that, and put away and go. Everybody witness that. Outside the jungle look like a figurehead. Look at them, you should be telling them what.
35
That's
seconds
why the
anymore.
morning he didn't come in camp. You didn't come on in, officer, you were so
Take a break.
He was kind of more gentlemanly. He wasn't kind of militant like how Milton Edwards and Duckwell and Spencer especially. They were making it harder for soldiers to work comfortably in the army. And that is why it was heading for the meeting.
All right. So there you have it. That was 3424 Lou Jones, retired staff sergeant. And I hope now you have a clearer picture of what the atmosphere was like.
Apologies to our Facebook Live audience. You may not have been able to hear the first part because the background, our music bed was below the recording, so you may not have been able to hear. So apologies for that.
Want this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then our voices in the background too. But for those listening on the radio, that piece from Lou Jones just speaks to, as you were saying earlier, some of the issues that soldiers, other ranks, had with the hierarchy in the regiment at the time. They were being worked very hard. They were being required to do things that, were outside of their scope. And the persons in authority were not listening to the troops on the ground. And they just continued to run the show as they saw fit.
Yeah.
Which led to the discontent.
One of the things that what is a sure sign, and if it happen again, I think people will take notice this time. You see soldiers passing up a chance to knock a ration, that do happen. anytime, especially Christmas ration, that do happen. And once that happen, something is wrong. So that was Lou Jones. So we're going to take a break, and when we return, you're going to hear from retired Colonel Wendell. His number is 0044. That's seniority. We'll be right back.
This is reality radio at its best. Eye on Dependency on I-95.5 FM.
That's sorted out. It's sorted out.
You trying something there now, Issa?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Dobson here from HMP London. Can I speak to Mr. James?
A song they play
This
today.
is Mr. James speaking.
My back car play
Can you
no.
hold the line? I'm
Yeah, why are you doing it?
Second
Especially
thing on
before
it.
we come on.
Daddy,
Hello, yes, Brian?
Daddy, just calling to tell you that locked up in the UK for drug trafficking.
Yes, sure. Oh, yeah? You lock up? And you tell me you were going to Bago? And I tell you about them boy you was lying with? Okay. Alright. Don't drop the soap. Cheerio.
Good evening to folks in the chat.
Reality
Hi,
radio at its
Barry.
best
We are
every
good.
Sunday
Thank
from
you,
6:15 to 8 p.m. on I-95.5
Hi, Jenny, saying
FM.
long time.
Don't miss it.
Thank you for tuning in.
Agricola Credit
appreciate that.
Mr. Lewis, apologies, we had some other technical issues, which is why we're hearing the chat in the background during the last segment. Apologies.
Appreciate that.
Yes, Alison, we know. We will try to do better with the other recordings.
He said as soon as you
Live back on this.
yeah,
This
as
is
soon as
Wati.
you finish,
Hi.
call it.
Alright.
Hi,
And let
hi,
them know so you can
welcome.
log out.
No goes.
And folks, please share the chat, have a watch party on Facebook, and let people. Or you can also tune in on your radio, I-95.5 FM. If this this medium is a little distracting for you, but we just thought, and you can also try I-95's page, their Facebook feed
So I'll call you tomorrow.
as well. Hi out there.
Right, so we're back on
On
you know
I-95.
what you were saying about the first clip?
No, when he was playing the clip, the bed was on. No, they were having some trouble here. Yes, and then with our voices in the background.
Hi, my name is Talir King, trauma survivor. and
Tell us if you're having any
trauma
problems
care
hearing
expert
us,
from
just
the
or the
state of
clips, please let us
Maryland.
know. Had a
It's a
problem this time, but if you're getting problems, please let us know.
I-95.5 FM, Trinidad
This one
and
is
Tobago.
inside the chat.
You're listening
This is
to
what-
Eye on Dependency.
Wendy and Elizabeth.
Natasha, reality radio at its best.
Thank you for staying with us. You're listening to Independency, and you can also join us live on Independency. We had some, you also join us on I-95.5 FM's Facebook stream, and also Rise Maximum Radio. They are streaming as well. So you have several options that you can listen to Independency this evening. We are recounting the events of the mutiny of 1970, and as I said, if you're just joining us, we're going to hear from John Jobe, Captain John Jobe again, and also Raffique Shah, who speaks about the trial and a message to the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Gary Griffith. So now we go to Wendell Salandy, one of the men who I think Brian has sang about, heroes of the rebellion. So clearly, you're going to hear Brian say, had they joined the mutiny, they couldn't stop the army. He said that in the Calypso, meaning that, you know, if this was well planned, things may have turned out different. But it didn't, and thank God for that. We should never repeat or have a repeat. But we would like you now to take a journey with retired Colonel Wendell Salandy. What happened to him that morning and the senior NCOs, and what did he experience? We'd like you to walk every step of the way with him. Put yourself inside of his head, his eyes, what he saw that morning.
Let's go.
0044, retired Colonel Wendell Salandy.
My number is 0044, Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Salandy. I'm a former member of the West India Regiment. I joined on the 22nd of June 1959. I spent 3 years in Jamaica, had the opportunity to be involved in some combat where the West India Regiment and the Royal Hampshire Regiment had to deal with the disturbance of one Reverend Henry and some men who tried to overthrow the government of Jamaica in 1960.
With respect to 1970, could you tell us about what you experienced on that morning in Tetron Barracks?
In 1970, I was a staff sergeant. I was the married quarters accommodation sergeant attached to the quartermaster stores. The person responsible for all married quarters and government quarters for soldiers. I normally inspect them and have a team that goes around and check them and things like that. On the morning of the 21st of April, I did a battalion falling where we were addressed by Colonel Christopher, then Major, who was the second in command of the regiment. After he had completed his address, I left, went down to the stores, armory, collect my rifle, and head to the sergeant's mess. 8:45 to be exact. I heard some shots being fired from the area of the bunker and the quartermaster stores. So I tried to get out of the mess to see what was happening. And then shots were being fired at the sergeant's mess. So I crawled back into the sergeant's mess and I went into the washroom where I met Warrant Officer Charles sitting on the base of one of the bathrooms. And I went into the bathroom and stand up. After that, I heard more shots again. I went back to the louvers and looked up to the area and I saw 2 persons standing there in the gabardine. So I knew it had to be some officers. And when I looked properly, I recognized it was Sergeant Major French, the RSM, and Payne, RQMS Payne. And they had both hands up in the air and there were soldiers behind them with weapons. So I recognized it as a serious business. And I'm seeing vehicles driving up and down from the bunker to the gas station. So it was kind of nearly at that time. So I went back to the mess and I heard a number of soldiers came to the mess. So they come with the sergeant and the sergeant mess and all this kind. As I said, I was in the washroom, so I couldn't see what was happening outside there. But I'm hearing the noise. Then 2 soldiers came into the bathroom. They told Mr. Charles, get up, come, you come. Then I heard somebody said to him, anyone else in there? He said, no. He said, fire 1 or 2 shots and make sure they come out. I stood the ground because where I was standing, I could have seen the mirror and I could have seen all the action they did. So the guy said he shot, there wasn't anyone there, and he walked out. And the next thing I heard again is sergeants going to the corridor, being escorted down to the guard room. After I realized they were locked up in the bar, and eventually they came out under pressure and they were escorted to the guard room. A few minutes after, I saw a lot of vehicles driving up and down, forming a convoy right in front of the guard room, going back to the medical room. I said, well, this thing getting serious. Every time I look, I see it getting more serious. Then I saw the vehicles left. I knew not one of the drivers were Mahmoud. They left and they went up, leaving Tetron. Then I heard some heavy gunfire. And then I saw people coming back down to Tetron. They're running, coming back down to Tetron. I said, what the hell of a thing is this? Then I saw a small airplane, and I saw the shooting at the plane. I actually saw that. They were shooting at the plane. Then a lot of them came into the sergeant's mess. There were a lot of civilians because I remember one Mr. Bostic, who used to work at the transport department, came into the mess. And we were discussing, talking what's happening and things like that. In the afternoon, approximately 1700 hours, I heard a battalion falling. I responded to that falling outside the medical room. They had approximately 100 and something to 200 men. Lassell and Shah were present. And Lassell said, I remember him saying quite clearly, all who want to go and help black brothers in over Spain, falling on his right, and who against them, falling on the left. He repeated a second time. I was leaning on the post and I moved forward. I said, sir, I am not with you. I am not in this thing. I heard at the time a machine gun cocked. And I looked and I saw who cocked the gun too. And I walked away. And then Mr. Shah was standing there. And he said, to Rock, you're not with us. I said, no. He said, why? I said, because if we're moving as a regiment, we must have orders, normal ground situation, mission execution. People must be able to go back and brief the troopers. And we don't move in this fashion. I told him so. So I'm not with you. There was one soldier who took the names of everybody who on that side of that. But there was one soldier by the name of John T. He eventually tried to come across on my side and moved through the court slowly. And eventually he came across on my side. That's one thing I remember. So that was so far for the 21st. After that, when I was walking around the place, I was one man in Tetra bar behind my beret, properly fixed. Not to the wrong side, properly fixed my beret on my head. A number of senior people have had the berets turned around. I saw that. The black part of the beret on the outside and the green part on the inside. I had my beret with my star on my head throughout. But that didn't worry me. I joined the army to be a soldier. I signed on the dotted line to die for the right of what I believe in. And that's how I looked at it. So I was able to walk around the camp. I recall the afternoon, I decided to go down to the dining hall to get something to eat. And a soldier said, "You can't get no bread in here, you know." So I called a guy named Tom. His name was Thomas. I said, "Tom, can I get a bread? I want to sergeant in the mess still who are around. I'm locked him up as that." Tom said, "Listen, soldier, if I tell you to take the bread up for the staff sergeant, you better give the sergeant the bread." And the soldier gave me about 4 bread, and I walked up back to the sergeant's mess. The other sergeant who were around the Rhine, Applewhite, and King, they were in the mess. Staff Sergeant Williams, I remember him too. But most of the other guys were locked up. On the Wednesday morning, I got up and I went to the guard room. I saw soldiers, guardian officers, and sergeants locked up in the guard room. So I went to them and I said, I wanted to speak to Hazel and Bentley. So they said, "Listen now, anyhow, go ahead." And I went, I spoke with Bentley, and I spoke with Hazel, and then I went back to the sergeant's mess. But I must mention that it was tension in Pt3. People were scared, some people were okay, but the guys like Norrie, Parkinson, these guys were operating as normal. I think it's on Tuesday morning or Wednesday evening, I looked out at the sea, and I saw some battleships facing Pt3 barracks. I remember that quite well. I saw it. At this time, I told Apple, "Listen, I get out of here, you know. So when you hear those people start the fire, you know, everybody getting killed in the space, you know." But it seemed as though in the mess, there was a story. So the person went and like told Mr. Shah, and then they come and they say, "I hear you want to go there, and you want to this and that," and they decided to arrest me the night. He came and he took me and he took the other sergeants and them, and then he went and he took the guys from the guard room, that's his name Johnson, and all the sergeants, and they marched just down to the training room back room, that is the one next to the dining hall. They had blocked it right around with lockers and sealed it off and things like that, and they put us in there. So we spent a few days there. Well, I enjoyed it. Playing cards right through, but they were not harassing us. But if I guess we tried to escape, they're going to shoot us. But nobody is trying to escape. They don't look up inside the area. Saturday morning, 11 o'clock, we released. So we to report to the Combined Services Officers Mess. That's where Brigadier Ferret and all his team, they were staying there. And when I reached there, the first thing Brigadier Ferret told me, "Say, Salandy, I would like you to go and take over the stores from Major Luke at the time." I went there, I took over all the ammunition and everything, and I was controlling that. I had up with me Stuart and Applewhite. 3 of us manned up bring there for a period of time. Until I recall one day, Boris came there and he said, "Fellows, give me some ammunition." And I said, "Partner, you can't get ammunition to here, and you have to sign for it." I said, "Sign here." He signed, he take about 20 rounds of ammunition, and he went across the Brigadier said and say, "You have a good man there."
Now you went to trial as a witness.
I sat on every court martial with Dan Juba, Milzo Dewey, who was the judge advocate, and all these people. And the day they came to Pt3, because they had to verify where you say you should do things. And I recall when I told them where I was, when I saw what was taking place, they went down to the drain. And then Dan Juba said, "Oh yes, he's consistent."
They were eventually freed of all charges.
Yes, there was some charge of condonation or something, and they wanted.
How did you feel about that?
Well, I was cool, you know, because I am a soldier. Every time I saw a man do something wrong, I write it down on a piece of paper, you know. And then I went and divided them based on that. This is fact. Every person I caught, I have to go and touch them in court. A lot of soldiers say, "When we come from here, we're going to kill the grass on your lawn and all you." And I wasn't worried about that. Up to now, they'll come back and kill the grass on my lawn. Because I know I was speaking the truth. So that was my role really in the thing, you know. That was my role in 1970. And as I always say, if it happens again, I'll do the same thing.
Now, do you think that these events of 1970 should be recorded?
I personally believe so, and I thought what you are doing there, if everybody speaks the truth of the part they played, one can put it in an order of sequence, and we will tell the story, what transpired. And that would be very good. I will support that 100%, because that's history, eh? That is history of Trinidad and Tobago.
Ingrid? Ingrid says hello. And?
That was 0044 Wendell Salandy, retired Lieutenant Colonel.
And of course, an abbreviated version of what happened at Tetron Barracks that morning.
Rock
that
Salandy,
day.
as he was
Rock
known.
Salandy. Stood up like a rock,
He
and he's a good poker player. I'm sure part of the card playing was poker because that was poker. You mean, to tell a lieutenant with some men who decided, who ready to shoot anybody, tell them, well, they'll do what they want. I don't want a part of that. That was one of the heroes of the regiment that Bryna spoke about. And remember, he experienced combat before.
Right.
So you need somebody like that on your team. And as he said, if we didn't plan this, I'm not going through this, because he understands going into battle unprepared. And that was a very good move. But he talked about a stoolie.
Yes.
Now, let me explain to you all, talk about a stool bird. And, you always heard that term bandied about.
Yep.
I think one of the, and we don't get political here, people, right? But one of the perfect examples of that was that letter to the U.S. ambassador. No, that is stooling at its very best. Because, and what people don't understand is the people you're stooling to, although they're glad for you stooling to them, but they don't respect you. Because one thing they say, if you can sell out your own people, we can't trust you, but they're glad for the stooling. However, I mean, on the street with police, they call them informants.
Or snitches.
Or snitches. But that letter, perfect example. Stool out your country and not understanding that it will affect everybody, even your people too. But
even within the, so he was talking about the sergeants in the mess that he was with, who heard the conversation and went to Shah and LaSalle and say, hey, this man talking about getting out of here.
somebody stole him out, and he got arrested. So he couldn't leave as he had planned. So, but I hope you took that journey with him and you understood what he faced. And I said that's just the tip of the iceberg, because a lot more senior NCOs experience, because you hear them say they marched some senior NCOs out of the mess into the guard room. Unprecedented. And so you heard it from the horse's mouth. We have some nicknames for you too, some aliases. Mr. Ramnath decided to put some aliases together so that, you've always fascinated by the aliases. So we'll share some of that with you. He put like 300 and something names. And this is from when he joined in 62 to up to 98 when he left. But we have some names that we're going to share with you that turns out to be people's first name. So Salandy now is going to Rock Salandy. Sometimes you hardly know somebody's first name because they that name that they got stuck with them till they retire. And up to this day, like Sudden Breaks, and understand Sudden Breaks don't like their name, but
who would? Because why? So, what is interesting though is the story behind how they got those names.
Yes,
That's what I wish we could.
So before we go to a break, let me share some of these names quickly with you. So we have Smudger, Toko, Toro, well, I put in Terra, Sweet Scratch, Skinhead, that was Colonel Vidal,
Sweet Scratch,
Palo, Big Brother, Piggy, Wazzle, Barbell, well, you heard from Mr. Modest earlier on in part 1, Mad Robots, Gunj, that's Colonel Derek, Mouse, Sexy, Mr. by BP, Old Boy, Baron Paul. We're going to take a break. You're listening to Independency. We're taking that journey. Stay with us as the journey continues. We'll be back.
High on dependency.
Toko, how are you going? All right, nice to see you.
The most influential name in radio.
So I hope you didn't join late. Because you joined late.
You missed the meeting.
Yeah, we finished Jones and Salandy, so we're going to John Jobe next. That's the man who did the hunting of the gorillas, and a pretty good job, we might add. And probably you all can make a contribution and say what you thought about Salandy's experience. Not only that, I batch, good evening. I like to say good evening to my batch, Mackenzie too. Mackenzie Joseph. Nice seeing you today, bro. And hi Cheryl, good evening. And yeah, so we're gonna hear from John Jobe, the man who hunted the gorillas, and then you'll tell us about what you think about the commissioner's response, or the commissioner's attack on, if you'll call it that. I think it's just Gary being Gary, but you know.
Roger says his father, 3005 Private Mohammed, was.
That was your father?
My
papi. Yes. I didn't know it was your You see what I mean, boy? You live and you learn.
Coming out. A lot of things
coming out.
Yeah,
and I have the name here.
A lot of things coming out. My pipi, you have that name?
Yeah, look at here. Yeah, I didn't know that was your dad. Okay.
But how did he get the name though? Do you have the story behind that? I would love to know. Why they call him that?
You know, some things we never asked. Eh? We just went along with the names.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the whole story there. Like how you get his name. I mean.
Yeah. We have any message on Facebook? I-95 Facebook page, girl?
Yeah, there were a couple.
Hello.
Check it out now. Yes, and these nicknames stick with you forever and ever. Amen. So every time someone see you, that's your name. You know. It's amazing how that happens.
Oh, okay, great.
But we have some messages.
Good evening. That should be Breaks. Yes, it's Breaks with it.
Yeah, Sudden Breaks.
Yep.
Tell us for guys. Tell you to work.
My cousin.
I never met Sudden, but my cousin told me about him.
All right, Anthony. Thanks.
Tell us.
Sudden Breaks. Well, that's what I thought. Not BREAKS, but BRAKES.
6:15 to 8 p.m. on
Oh yes, Lobo daughter. I forget your stupid Cheryl is Lobo's daughter.
I'm Governor Malcolm Lewis from HM Prison 1 of London. You're listening to Iron Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Yes.
That is Wolf in Spanish, so clearly that's a long story.
With Garth and Natasha.
Must be an abbreviated version. They can give
at
us
its best.
something to do with a snake, right? I mean, I don't know. Alright, so we're going back in and we're gonna queue up John Jobe.
Yes, get ready for John Jobe. My PP is not high ligger. No, it's not high ligger.
The man just said it was his father, Mohammed. You ready?
Yeah.
Alright, thank you for staying with us. This is Iron Dependency, and this is part 3 of our 1970 Military Mutiny series. We've heard from Lou Jones, from Wendell Salandy, and now we are going to replay, by popular demand, John Jobe, 1179 John Jobe, retired captain, who was the guerrilla hunter of the batch that we have heard from, one of them.
Another hero of the regiment.
Yes.
And also, Lou Jones told us about, he said, you know, people like Vidal, Derek, Bazi, Brizan, Rex, and Raf, they were considered, well, I'll use the term in this context here, shit hot soldiers. You know, they were fit men, and they were really admired for all of that. You know,
good officers.
Yes, but also Lou Jones spoke about relationship, how important it is to be grounded and having a good relationship with your men.
Yeah.
You know, and that's so
listening
important.
to them, importantly, listening to their concerns and acting on them if you can, you know, not just listening people's grouses and doing nothing, but you know.
Yeah, and as Babel once said to us during recruit training about grouse meeting, when we used to have grouse meeting, and he said, army without a grouse, you have a mutiny on your hand. You see, and that's when men stop. It's like when they stop eating for the luncheon.
That was a signal. That was a huge sign that things were amiss, and it was not addressed, which led, you know, in his view and in many other views, many other persons' views, to the mutiny. Right.
So and remember, we still have another part of Coast Guard. I'll leave that as a surprise for you all to cover, and then we have the unsung heroes like the cadets, the reserves, the police, the prisons. They play. You heard Mr. Abraham last week. Well, you'll be hearing from them as well as we go along. So now for the guerrilla hunter, it's his turn at the microphone. Let's hear from 1179, retired John Jobe, retired Captain John Jobe, as he take us through the accounts of him and his men as they went after the National Union of Freedom Fighters. Let's join John Jobe.
In 1979, I joined in 1962, went to Jamaica, did my training in Jamaica in the Blue Mountains called Newcastle. From there, I came down to Kingston and spent a couple of years, and then go to Trinidad and Jobe, called back to Trinidad after the collapse of the Federation to form the Trinidad Regiment. I worked my way up from private to sergeant to staff sergeant, lieutenant and captain. I retired as a captain.
Could you tell us what role did you play in the events of 1970?
In 1970, I was a platoon sergeant under the command of Lieutenant Derrick, and our platoon was detailed to go to Sandy Grande, where it was believed that these guys who formed themselves into a band of hooligans, I should say, attacking innocent people, robbing banks, and even gardeners in the mountains, because they set up camps in the mountains. Some were set up in the Cora Hills, and they come down every now and then and rob the banks and rob innocent people. They call themselves the National Union of Freedom Fighters, with the blessings of the Black Power movement. And my platoon was called out based on information received from the police through Randall Burrows, who eventually retired as commissioner. He gave us information and we reacted on it. The reaction was to find them in the hills and destroy their tents and camp and whatnot and bring them to justice. But the point is this, they were armed. So my platoon, which was divided into half under myself as the sergeant, and half under Lieutenant Derrick, taking time off and on and off basis while we were in Sandy Grande area. And while there, got information, and I was the sergeant in charge. Lieutenant Derrick was off duty at the time. I took my men out to meet with the police at St. Joseph Police Station and got a briefing from the ex-commissioner. He suspected that these guys were in the hills of Cora and we have to find them. But I was trained for all of this guerrilla activity, so that was no problem for me. One morning, we set out about 5 o'clock into the hills in search of them. As a matter of fact, Burroughs was able to get one of the men. He was held for something else, and he decided to talk, and he directed us up the path of the Cora River, almost in the area where these guys were hanging out. And when we reached that point, we had to take one of the forward sentries, and he was arrested. And I continued with my men on the right side of the river, walked a few distance and saw where the footpath was coming down to the river to get water to use in the camp and so on. And I decided to follow the footpath they made on the hillside, and I was confronted by Jennifer Jones, who fired a shot at me and missed. And as she missed, I returned the fire, but not to hit her. Tell her to drop the weapon. She did drop the weapon. She cooperated, and I ran into her, held her, and used her as a shield to get into the camp where people like Guy Haywood and Brian Jeffers and these guys, they were hiding out along with Jennifer's sister, who got killed later on in the day. But I arrested Jennifer and handed over to the police that was with me and continued the pursuit because they started to run. When they heard me coming in, I used a tactic that we use in the army called fire and movement. And I got into the camp, but by the time I got there, I saw blood all over the camp and hammock and all this kind of thing where they were brutally living. But when we started to run uphill, where me and my men pursued, we left sentries in the camp, of course, to deal when the police come to take a record of the things that they had, the equipment that they had and all this kind of thing. We even found books on Che Guevara, books on guerrilla warfare, which was handed over to the police. So I decided to follow them and catching up with them. I think this guy's name was Kenya. He separated himself from the group that was on the run and aimed at me, and as usual, when he aimed, I thought my life was threatened, so I fired and he was shot. He died We left India and we continued following the others. And we made a curve right back from the mountains down to the river, across the river. This is where the other sister, Beverly Jones, well, actually she got shot while I was shooting my way into the camp. All of her face she got shot. But she couldn't go anymore. But when she saw the soldiers coming, she aimed at them, and L'Oreal was in charge of that party. He fired upon her, and yes, he was killed. Something good came out of it. The sister who I arrested with a gun, I took away the gun from her. She eventually went before the court, and I can't remember if she spent time in prison, but she eventually went to Cuba and studied and became a doctor or something like that. That was the end, so to speak, of the National Union of Freedom Fighters. Now, I owned a business in Carnage, a restaurant and bar, while I was in the army. And information came that they were going to bomb the restaurant, but they couldn't get at me otherwise. And this is where the police intercepted them in the woodblock, and I think one man was killed, and the car that they were using was a stolen car they found, and grenade and all this kind of thing, which was to be used on my building in Carnage. After a while, the NUFS might have remained the name, but they were mashed up then. They were all over the place because of me, more or less. To the extent where they wanted to even get rid of my family. I had 2 young boys and my wife. I had to send them by my sister's home in Point Fortin for safety, and then to Barbados, where my 2 children grew up and had their education. Because every camp we raided, whether they were there or not, we found pictures of me where orders came from the top to get rid of me and my family. And this information came through the Secret Service of the police, informing me to be careful. As a result of that, I was issued a firearm.
Were you all given commendations?
Yes, Villarreal and myself were awarded the Medal of Merit Silver for our work in the field and the effect that we had on the National Union of Freedom Fighters. So the looting and the hold up and so on stopped for a while. That was put to rest. And then Villarreal was promoted to Lance Corporal, and I was promoted to a staff sergeant while in the field.
So Villarreal was just a private then?
Yeah, he was a private, yeah.
Yeah, brave one.
He was a very brave one, and he knew the mountains well. So this was our reward. We were the only 2 that received anything.
Did you think that this should have been documented and everybody joining the military after that should have known about this story?
Oh yes, I think so, but I don't know what happened. But the commissioner of police then was Yusuf Bernard. He wrote a book, but the information was not true. He said that Burroughs called on the men to put on the arms, and the men didn't do that, and Burroughs fired, and one was killed, and all this kind of thing. It's totally false. My version of it is because I was the person there on the shootouts with these men. But the actual shooting and finding the camps wherever they were, Villarreal and myself were the ones like the guerrilla hunters, because it baffled the government that these men were living in the mountains and coming down and robbing people and going back in the mountains, and it took soldiers to find them and dig them out, and that's how it ended.
All right, so there you have it. For those of you who missed him last Sunday, and you know, all the positive comments we're getting on our Facebook page, thank you very much, on our Independence Facebook page and I-95 as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tell us what cousin 3771, I think I would have served with him for a while, but that was John Jobe. Anyone listening over there who can have some information for Jennifer Jones, is it possible
we can contact her?
That we can contact her, please? Because as I said last week, and everybody who listened confirmed that for these women so young, and as one Commissioner Philbert mentioned, so intelligent and brilliant, to be part of a movement like this, knowing full well that it could end their lives. And Beverly was a brave young lady, full of heart, and she decided to, try to hold off the troops while, I mean, that's amazing. That I can't get over that.
As a teenager, and I think she's not unique in the sense that a lot of people who were part of the Black Power movement, the revolution, whether they were part of NUF or they were marching on the streets or they were, however, whatever kind of action they took, it was mostly young people, huh?
Yes. Yes.
And I mean, young people are the ones who drive any kind of revolution. That is just how people were made up back in those days. If you weren't willing to die for the revolution, what's the point?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, and then back then they didn't have Facebook and cell phones for sure.
Correct. So they weren't doing it for fame or for likes, right?
That's right. They weren't doing that for likes. I can tell you that. So anyone out there who can give us a contact for Jennifer Jones, and if she's willing to speak with us, we'll be happy to speak with her. And because we need to get inside of someone who was a part of that, who was that movement.
Yes, especially NUF, because it has been very interesting to hear the military perspective on the NUF in terms of, you know, they were basically sent out there to capture them and to kill them if necessary. Some of them were killed. So what was the thinking behind that kind of militant approach to revolution? Why did they think that a violent sort of revolution was necessary in the country at the time? And, you know, some of the tactics that they would have learned about. I mean, Jobe talked about finding a lot of material on guerrilla warfare and stuff in the camp. So they were obviously students of revolutions that had taken place in other countries, and it would be interesting to hear from those who were there what exactly they were trying to achieve.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Independency Live, and we are recounting the events of the military perspective of 1970. What happened at Tetron Barracks that morning? We're now going to hear from Mr. Raffique Shah. He's going to take us through short piece about what he speaks about the trial, what they went through, what they discovered while going through the whole process, and
the defense that they
used
to exonerate them.
To get exonerated and be free men. Let's listen to 3227 retired Lieutenant Raffique Shah. Well, you know, I don't know what would be his status in military circles today, but he's a retired soldier, that's for sure. And you know, he was Lieutenant Raffique Shah back then. So let's hear what he had to say.
We made a plea of condonation. We could not deny that we committed mutiny. We never denied that. We'd have been foolish to deny that. But Rex and I, when you're at Sandhurst, you trained in military law, but not extensively. But in prison, as I say, you don't have anything to do. We sent for the 3 manuals, Queen's regulations, because remember we weren't a republic then, so the Queen was still titular head of Trinidad. So you had Queen's regulations, you had manual of military law, and our own defense act. And while going through the book, Rex reading one, I reading the other, because 2 of us shared a cell downstairs in C Division. Mike Bazzi had gone to the infirmary where he was staying. And going through the book, I came across this section where it said, if a soldier commits a felony and his commanding officer condones it, he cannot be held on trial for that offense. So I read it over and over, what madness is this? So I told Rex, I said, Rex, have a look at this. So when he read it, what is this story? So we thought about it. We said, well, this is our way out. Because we can't say we ain't commit mutiny, but we could say that the colonel condoned it, which he did. He told us, he said, when they kicked me out of here in 68, I thought you fellas would have done this. One of the days he came down when he addressed the men, we formed up the men on the square. There's while the mutiny underway. He told them, he started to complain about how they treated him in 1968. He hadn't yet got his pension in 1970. He said, if you want to know the color of Montanos, look at Stanley Johnson's tongue. All the men on the service could hear that. He used it repeatedly. So when we called Alan Alexander, Desmond Allen, and Lennox there to show them this thing, they were floored. They had never seen a law like that. So they took it and said they'll have to study it and get back to us. When they did, they told us what we knew all along, which is you have to have done something to have it condoned. In other words, you can't say, well, I didn't commit mutiny, but yet you say it was condoned. So if you lose the condonation, you lose the case. no problem because already our minds were made up about having to go to prison. And if we win it on this thing, well, we would be all the happier for doing that. So we're going with it, but we have to keep it secret. We kept it tight, even among the 15 men who were on trial, because we had to spring it as a surprise on the prosecution, which is exactly what we did. The court sat for about 2 weeks, and eventually, when they were finished with everything, Danjuma said, Mr. Prokop, who was the prosecutor, can you call your first witness? Desmond Alam, my lawyer, stood up and said, Mr. President, before you do that, my client wishes to plead condonation under section, whatever it was, of the Queen's Regulations and Defense Act. Well, boy, the court went into confusion because nobody knows what they're really talking about. So when they read it and they get the gist of it, they stood down the court for 15 minutes. It took about half an hour. And when they came back, Danjuma made me stand up and he said, Lieutenant Shah, do you understand what your lawyer is doing? I said, yes, sir. But he didn't know it was we who told the lawyers to do that. He said, and you agree to go along with that? He said, certainly, sir. He said, okay, that's the only time I went in the witness box. I went in and told the story of how we took over Petron and how Seret condoned, because we had asked for the return of Seret as commanding officer. Rex and I lost before the court martial. Our lawyers took it to the appeal court and they filed the appeal. And when the appeal court heard it, justices, Phillips, who was acting Chief Justice, Clement Fraser and Telford Georges unanimously ruled that the condonation plea had not been given a fair hearing, and as a result of that there was a serious miscarriage of justice, and they have no choice but to free Lieutenant Shah and Lieutenant LaSalle. Well, we won the appeal, but they didn't free us because we still had the treason charge. That is what they were holding us on. But the state went ahead and appealed that decision to the Privy Council. The state had to then present its case on July the 26th, 1972. We had a pro bono English lawyer who used to appear in matters like that for people who were accused. And he was there with Frank Solomon, who was Patrick Solomon's son, who was one of our lawyers. And then we would hear BBC News in the prison, 4 o'clock BBC News that evening. Privy Council has dismissed the appeal of the Trinidad Attorney General in the matter involving the mutineers Rex LaSalle and Raffique Shah. And the next day, they freed us. At 4 o'clock the next day we were out. And the following day, they had to pardon all the fellas who had been convicted because it would have looked stupid to have us free and to have the men imprisoned in somewhere in Carrera, somewhere in Golden Grove. So we won legally at every turn.
So that was Raffique Shah explaining his and Rex's defense for the charge of mutiny, and we learned a new word today, condonation. That was the provision in law that allowed them to go free.
Yes.
And just to answer a question on our Facebook Live about their objectives, the mutineers' objectives when they were planning to leave Tetron. From Mr. Shah's accounts and others, the intention was not to go into Port of Spain, not to take over any government or anything. They were heading to Cambodia.
No, that could be argued a bit because remember, one of the men said they were going to give rifles to the brothers out there.
Yes.
And remember, there's one where we heard about the ambulance that took some rifles out. Well, I won't give away too much of that.
Right.
But we look.
But
the thing
again,
is,
it just speaks to the disparate opinions and views and actions that people took when they realized, hey, this is happening. Let us do X, Y, or Z. It wasn't all
as Carla
coordinated.
Said, 1970 was a year of revolution. Young black people marching for civil rights, unions marching for economic progress, the army in a state of restlessness, all independent, but with a common focus. Change, vague as it was to all. So that should answer your question there.
Yeah, even the fire that that happened at
Camp
Ogden
Ogden.
was Raffique told us that it had nothing to do with them. They did not instruct any such activity at Ogden. So clearly people took it upon themselves to act in ways that, you know, were destructive, some of them, and were separate and apart from what other people were doing and what was happening in other geographical locations.
Right. And remember again, if Jennifer Jones, we knew, was ambassador to Cuba some years under the NR government.
Yes.
We don't know where she is now. And remember this name, Andrea Jacobs? Lou just sent that name for me, and I remember Andrea Jacob was a part of the movement as well. You know, that's another famous name that we forgot, Andrea Jacobs. So the military museum in Chaguaramas is another thing that, you know, all of this information should be there. All of this, somebody could just drive in there, put a headset on, and listen to some of these accounts. No, it was not producing a book. We just took it upon ourselves to reach out to the men who were actually on the ground, who got involved with this incident, with this mutiny, and they decided to share their experiences with us, and we are really grateful for it, because I was a soldier and I didn't know about these things and served under some of these men, so which was so ironic. So we thank them again for taking the time to speak with us and giving us their account of what would have transpired that morning. Before we take that bit, let's go straight to 13th to hear the response to the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Raffique Shah. Very short, concise. As I said, you all know that was a topic of discussion for this entire last week. Corey Gilles wrote a response.
Yes, some agreed with the Commissioner, many did not.
Yeah, I agree with the Commissioner, the fact that the military should not reach a state that should happen again, right? But if you listen to Lou Jones and you listen to others, you know the saying, out of evil cometh good, and things change for some of the men, and eventually women who joined the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force after that. And so we thank. But I was speaking about the military museum in Chaguaramas. I think that's something that we should take a look at again, please, people. Whoever is responsible for, you know, Ms. Kelshall, still taking care of it, but it needs funding, and let's see how we could preserve some of that legacy. I mean, every country with their salt, you know, you can go and actually see the first shots and putty that they had. Some of these soldiers now don't even know about shots and putties. Yeah, you may have one or two in a book somewhere, but that military museum should be preserved and given all the, if we have to each serviceman donate $5 a month. But that's another story. We will get to that at a later date with some suggestions. Before we go to Mr. Shah, we have Panther, more nicknames: Lobo, Panther, Horse, that's deceased Carrington, was doing over Carrington, yeah, Horse. I'm a Cat, Shay, Raf, Speckadus, Mapapi, Kadanka, Bullethead, Raja, who was Ken Doldron, Ben Chassis, Rat Milk, Deuces,
Rat Milk. Rat Milk.
I was Michelle. I was good Michelle. Rat Milk. While Natasha trying to catch herself, this is the response to Mr. Shah. To the Commissioner of Police, sorry.
Could you give us a response to that article written by the Commissioner?
I was somewhat taken aback that the Commissioner would come after me in a vitriolic way. Maybe on second thought, I should not have been surprised, because he has been doing that with different people. But still, I believe that in his position as Commissioner, he ought to be careful with what he says and how he says it, because I never denied that I was a mutineer. In fact, we hold proud to that tradition. We held an annual reunion camp from every year, except this is the first year that it has not happened. And at that camp, other soldiers would visit us, and among those who visited us were several chiefs of defense staff dropped in to CL1, share a drink with us and talk. Shortly after our emergence from prison, we got along well with the successive commanding officers. Once Seret and Christopher and that lot had gotten out of the way, all the others from the time of Brigadier
word from Mr. Shah.
That's
Mr. Shah.
And we could put that to bed now, right?
Well,
unless
let's go.
Yeah, somebody wants to respond to that.
Right, so folks, that's the lineup we have for you today, this evening on our Independency. We hope that you would have gotten further insight of what happened in Tetron Barracks. Remember, we have another part still that's even more interesting, with reference to the role of the Coast Guard. And I want to congratulate the Coast Guard, having said that, for that big drug bust. 160 million, fellas. Man, go to the head of the class, fellas. Coast Guard, always admire you all for it's not easy working out there. So we want to thank you all very, very much again for your service on the front line out in that ocean. Congratulations on that drug bust. I think they deserve a round of applause for that. Cool. Give them a little love now. Right, so oh yes, I forget my section from my Bone Daniel and Zorel. That was Lou Jones. Zorel. And then we had females too, Don't feel like they got away.
Yes.
Okay, so we had Scatters, Miss Piggy, Rango. Let me leave that very before I go through. To those of you parents out there who's struggling with a son or a daughter right now, it's unfortunate that none of the rehab centers are open. But there are a number of things that you can do still if you reach out for help. So give us a call and let us know how we could help. I know now, especially, they will be going out a lot at night. Something will have you really paranoid, a crack addict especially, because it causes a short-lived intense high that is immediately followed by the opposite, an intense crash or depression, which causes edginess and craving for more of the drug. People who use it often don't eat or sleep properly. They can experience greatly increased heart rate, muscle spasms, convulsions. The drug can make people feel paranoid, angry, hostile, and anxious, even when they aren't on it, because that don't last in the system. 10 to 15, 20 seconds, and we want more. So if I come home with 4 rocks, within the space of half an hour that finish, and preparing to smoke it, especially the black cigarette, longer than smoking it itself. Seconds it lasts, and it's done. So I have to get up, go and get more. And that will cause the family some concern, that I have to leave home and go get crack cocaine whole night. Police, I call on the police again. I'm sure police picked up a lot of them this time around, getting to the crack blocks. Alcohol will be more purchased in the day and drank in the day because, and there was a huge accident over the weekend. Now, if the Prime Minister extend this stay-at-home thing, I will support them 100%, because something wrong with us. How you gonna have a party? The accident report said the people were coming from a party. Really? That's how powerful addiction is. It's a style, to alcohol, you must go out and drink and party. Serious accident this morning. Let's take some calls, 622-3937. So let's hear what you have to say. The Saint, Daryl, what's it?
Sweet Scratch.
Sweet Scratch.
How we got his name.
Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hey, good afternoon, Kata Natasha. How are you guys doing?
Good evening, Toronto.
Yeah, man. Hey, you're making me laugh. Who is the called Toko?
Toko, I really don't know. Remember these names would have been from 1962 to
I think was Hotel Alpha might give my Kotango.
Okay. You think so?
Who Old Clothes and Dicky?
Sergeant?
Dicky?
Old Clothes is private.
Old Clothes.
And Dicky is Adams.
Right. Oh, Dicky Adams. Yeah, Dicky Adams. Yeah, he was like one of them.
They was by my training instructor in Coquico in Chicago camp.
Okay.
Coquico.
Nice.
Yeah, Coquico.
Yeah.
So when I hear myself Toko there, I say, aha, I know who it is.
Right.
Yeah, good program again, and I just heard the corporal who was at the UCAM there, Lou Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me give you a joke one night, about him. One night, the current went, and he ordered everybody out on the square, and tell everybody come out in the square. And apparently he telling us, well, listen, I want you guys to do this. I want you guys to go and clean all the toilets, clean everywhere, the administration everywhere. But we said, Corporal, we cannot see to clean these places. It's dark. He said, I want you guys to clean it. And I am on duty and I want you guys to do it. So while he was there shining the torchlight, one guy hit him a slap on the forehead. And that he about 2 or 3 slaps hit him. And I was standing there watching that, and I said, they shouldn't do that. But he ordered everybody back inside the dorm. But that was the fun part about it. But he was a good instructor, and I'm proud to hear him talking.
Well, look with that boy. All right.
Wow.
All right,
Okay,
Thank you very much. Because Dickie Adams, Dickie Adams, one of them, I would always say mad instructors who train us back in them time. I had a girl, list of them instructors who train us. Because I remember writing one telling my mother, we have mad people training us. Yeah, them fellas, them was St. Anne's specialists, all of them. Remember Fitzy John asked me to put on leather boots with stud and to jump down in the drain, that famous drain, and don't make no noise. The whole platoon jumping down in a drain with leather boots and not making noise. Hello, good evening, sorry.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. You spoke about Andrea Jacobs. She's still around, you know.
Yes, so
she's still around somewhere in Point 14.
Oh, she's Point now.
Yeah, but I must say, no, she's from Point 14. She was always from Point 14.
Okay.
But I must say she was a very, very educated girl, you know.
Mm-hmm.
She was a girl who did the bank robbery in Barclays Bank somewhere in St. James.
Okay.
Right. But she was a teacher at that time, you know.
Wow.
She was a school teacher.
Amazing.
Yeah, but she's still around and still doing well.
All right.
Okay?
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for
Thank you very much.
Our close was Graham. Right. Yes. Yeah, Fitzy, we jump down in the drain and don't make no noise. And this is dark, you know. And all I hear is somebody shooting the bank. Man pelting with a big stone, you know, because he can't be making too much noise. And I said, but what kind of mad scene is this? How you want me jump down in the drain with leather boots with studs and don't make noise? A whole platoon. And yeah, but that was for a reason. That brought out a certain thing in soldiers training under these guys was amazing. Hello, good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, brother and sister.
Good evening.
Got all clothes. That's Graham.
Yes, somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hope you really can get this thing documented and find out if Death's still alive. You ever hear about Death?
From South?
Makano.
Yeah, he died. Yeah, no, he passed away.
Oh, he passed away?
Yes.
Right, and I will tell you, men who was involved, like Colonel Nelson, them who was in jail with Shah and them. If these fellas are alive, and them could get history too.
Right.
And like, well, Terra there too. I said, you're supposed to pass through Terra hand.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
You're supposed to pass through Terra.
But yeah, here's mad people that tell you what's
All
training.
right. Okay, brother.
Yes. Yes, Terra was part of that training wing at the time. That time it was training wing. Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I've heard Raffique Shah over the years talk about the whole incident extensively. But this is the first time I've actually heard this side of his experience, where he how they were able to get their freedom. He has never spoken about that before.
Yes.
You know, publicly, at least publicly. I have never heard that. And I mean,
right.
You know, but I have over the years, because I wasn't born yet when this whole bacchanal happened. But I've heard over the years, and it's nice that you, I guess, based on your background, could take the protective services angle more extensively than has been done before.
Yes.
But I would also like to hear somebody take somebody's perspective from those, because you keep hearing people talking about the Chinese and the Syrians and the whites, but I've never heard anybody speaking from giving their side of the story, what happened, you know, how they were affected. Because, you know, when they had the civil rights march in America, there were white people who actually marched with Dr. King.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He had white white supporters. I would like to hear from somebody who, on the other side, because it's 50 years on and I've never heard anyone speak out from their, that I've never heard it from their perspective.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Yes, we have.
Thank you.
Yes, we will.
Somebody may contact us having heard what we've done so far and want to tell their story. But
Well, remember, we have the sons of Mr. Luke, Colonel Luke,
yes, we have some
to plead for
civilians to hear from us.
Yes, they were actually in the middle of that whole debacle, and they have their story to tell too as well. So, of course, yes, we'll have the victims. Roger Mohammed explaining how his father got the name Mapipi. Apparently he was a girl's man, and you said take away men, girls, and things in the book. Okay. Hello, good evening. Hello.
Hi. Good evening, God.
Good evening.
God, you have to call out your number, and you had lost my phone with your number.
Say again?
So, your number, I lost my phone with it.
Okay.
So you have to call it back over. But this girl, Jennifer, she used to live at Gonzales at one time, but she now moved to Camuto, I think.
All right. Okay. Well, hopefully somebody will hear and can hook us up.
Yeah. But the fella Lobo, he was a white boy.
Lobo?
Yeah, fair skin guy.
No.
Oh, okay then. Later.
All right. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Clem Haynes, a former member of SNUF, and I'd like to just give a brief thing on concerning the death of Beverly Jones.
Clyde James?
Clem Haynes is my name.
Clem Haynes.
Clem Haynes?
From NUF.
Yes, sir. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
oh, you're a former member of NUF. Okay.
All right.
I was trying to get through all the time, but I don't know how long my may last.
Is it possible, Clem, you hear me?
Yeah.
Is it possible you could take my number and give us a call? I wouldn't want to rush you off the phone at all. We need
Give
to
us
speak.
a call.
Yes, my number. Take my number, huh?
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, thank you very much for hooking up with us.
I'm glad you're listening.
Yes, I'm glad that you're listening. And, you know, one thing about what Mr. Jobe said, you know, it turned out nice. I mean, well, you know, he's sparing Jennifer's
but
life.
this one is very interesting.
Yes. My number is 756.
7 5. Hold on.
Yeah, so we have a former member of the National Union of Freedom Fighters, and glad
Yes.
everyone is here. 756 6337.
53
6337.
63
Yes.
77.
No, 756 6337. 756 6337.
Okay, 337.
Yes.
Okay, I'll get back in touch with you.
Okay,
Before you
thanks
go,
a lot.
do you have anything to say based on what you heard this evening? Or
No, I don't want
previous
to.
No, not now.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Except when I make my contribution.
All right.
All right. Thanks
for
Thanks for hooking up, right?
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, man.
Not fair.
Not fair.
Right.
Take care. 622-3937. Good evening.
Good evening, God.
Good evening.
You guys trying to get on to you guys. Listen, all my years, I'm 55. All my years in Trinidad, I have never heard of all these things.
You never heard what?
You never heard?
All these things I'm hearing, right?
Okay.
And you all have done a wonderful job. I just hope we can just get more and it can properly be documented. It's wonderful. Trust.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good job, guys. Good job.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care. Yeah, well, we're really happy that we got the opportunity to do it. You know, as a former soldier, I am really
Yes,
hungry for this information. Good evening.
I just want to join with the rest of the people who called in there. It's a good program. You and your wife compile a very nice. And as a retired soldier, we're excited to hear some of the history.
Right.
I don't know why. I spent over 29 years there. I don't know why, we never heard anything like how you all bring it out now. Right. And it's so really sad to know the history, as you say, that they never want to bring it out. Something I would like to ask, though, if you could get Rex LaSalle. I don't know why, I ain't sure. But I mean, Rex LaSalle part, and he played an important part and a real part too. Yes. What happened to Rex LaSalle? You're not getting in contact with him, I understand he live away.
Yes, well, we asked Ralph if we could get in contact with him.
But he's usually here in Trinidad at least once a year, so perhaps
once a year, yes. So, chance if you could contact him too, because it's very important to hear his side of it too, you know.
Yes.
But I never condemn them to say I condemn them and that kind of thing. But what I say is that it's nice to see that they put systems and things in place. I know you didn't know that that girls meeting at Asulia could have gone to his OC in a nice forum and have a nice little discussion if they have some issues, you know. Yes. Even somebody who work as a SAM major too, it's good to listen to what the subordinate saying, you know, the soldier saying. And I think that after I joined 9 years after the 1970 thing, that approach I was one of listening to what the ground saying, and I think that you made the point that when people are refusing the ration and all this kind of thing, you know something is brewing and something was, you know, on the thing. So I am saying that good program, you all. I know that a lot of listenership in terms of the retired soldiers and even present soldier, present soldier, who told me the program is on again this evening. So I want to thank you and your wife again for keeping this program and keeping the history of the Army. Don't care whatever it is, but history is very important in knowing about the history. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Billy.
Thank you very much.
You know, somebody wanted to know, well, you know what, the National Union of Freedom Fighters had their role to play in 1972, Lano. So I think right that we hear from them, what really got into their minds to really start this, how long they plan to do it, what they had planned to do, how they plan to come out of it. You know,
and to the extent that they did come in contact with members of the regiment at that time,
yes,
I think it's worthwhile to hear their perspective.
Yes. Well. So, thank you very much again, Old Soldier, and we have a Hope. Thank you very much. Great program. Active member of the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment locked on. Thank you very much, son, and pass the word around. Thank you for your service, Nicholas. Good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, God, pleasant evening to you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The time is right for you to take all the information that you would have gotten over the past few weeks and put it in book form. No bad breeze, don't blow. You are one of God's children.
Okay, sir.
Have a good one.
All right, thanks very much.
Yeah,
good evening.
Yeah, got to call him back again. They call him about nicknames. But two things. Find out about if somebody dissatisfaction that had men in the Army in that time was getting preferential treatment to others. That's part of the growth. And also find out how Collingwood get the name, or Grandwood get the name Collingwood. You remember Barnabas Collins?
Yeah.
You know, you remember the road Grandwood? Find out how they get that name, how they call it Collingwood. Collinswood, yeah.
All right.
I have a story behind that.
Hello, good evening.
Beautiful.
Hello?
Good day, God.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Natasha.
Hi.
Beautiful program. God, I want to put a spin on this for you. Earlier on, one of your colleagues spoke about the raid they did up at Core, the raid when they raid the camp with Jones and them and they found books.
Yeah.
Right. At that time, I was working at Stephen's Books Department. As you remember, we were going through what was called black consciousness in the country.
Yeah.
And many of the books had the Stephen label. Remember, if you could remember, Stephen's Books Department had a black section.
Yes.
Right. And then eventually that disappeared.
Yeah.
Because that instructions came down. Then Chogdas had sang some calypso. Remember, we had to think he had a prime minister who's a black historian, but he didn't want the people to learn of themselves. If you can remember all those calypsos. So I am pleased with a program like this. Then earlier on, 2 or 3 programs before, I think, if I remember you correctly, Garth, you said you were doing the services. So I want you to continue. For example, you will do these prisons, the fire, etc. Remember, there are a lot of things, for example, where the prisoners come to remember that a big escape down Carrera years gone by in the 90s.
Yes.
Right. So if you could do all that, because all these things are not truly documented in history. And I keep trying to tell people there is so much on this country. I mean to say, please don't give me our steel band is not documented properly. And Chokdas, and then remember there's a line in one of Chokdas' calypso, so much history here about John Craig, etc. Nobody will even write a thing.
Right.
So you're doing a very good program, and if you can continue after you finish with your colleagues, and then do the other services, you will have a wonderful continuation like part 1, part 2. Not like how Gale have part 1, part 2, and 3, you know what I mean? You will have part 1, part 2, and 3 with all these services. It will be good because there are plenty things that the public, not say don't know, but plenty things that has been covered.
Yes.
And I appreciate you taking my call and other people who would like to come in. And this program is very educational for the youths at school. I know they don't want to hear the history, but it's important.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
All the best to you.
Happy quarantine, eh?
All right.
Yeah.
Same to you.
Yes.
Krabby, nice to know you're on, man. Nice.
Krabby.
And
Kenny Atta is suggesting that we get a perspective from someone from the government of the day. I don't know how many of those persons would still be alive.
Okay. Good try. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Dr. Natasha.
Good evening.
What you got here?
Hey, what's happening, Roger?
Keep up the good work.
Thanks, man.
I'm looking at you all on your page here, your dependency page, and a gentleman posted a comment, and it's a very interesting comment to my mind.
What is that?
What about getting a perspective from somebody who was in the government of the day, and who was the Minister of National Security at that time? You don't think that would be an interesting perspective?
Yes, of course, and how the decisions were made back, during that time. Yes, we will, once they are alive and willing to speak with us, we could ask around.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Okay. We'll do that.
Take care.
Thanks for the suggestion.
We'll see. Because we know that there were a number of people advising the Prime Minister at the time, and there may have been other members of government who would have interacted with military personnel.
Yeah, let's take some more calls quickly. Let's see how much we can get in, because I know a lot of people want to make their contribution.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. I try to remember the name of the young man who was killed during the Black Power demonstrations at Lincoln Town. And there was a big, I think he was buried in Shannon or something too. And there was a big...
He was killed. He was killed by police.
Yes. I try to remember his name.
What?
A young man who was killed by police
during the Black Power demonstration.
I think it might have been
and there was a big procession to the cemetery where they went someone. I can't remember exactly where it was.
Yes, I can't
I'm
remember.
trying to remember his name.
If anybody knows, let us know on Facebook or call us and remind us, please, because his death spurred another, as this caller is saying, spurred another massive, march and demonstration on the occasion of his funeral. So he was a sort of a signal marker for a lot of people as to how people were being oppressed, particularly by the police at the time.
Good evening.
Sorry,
we lost
Basil Davis. That's his name. Basil Davis.
His name was Basil Davis.
Yes.
Basil Davis.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Basil Davis. Yes.
Good evening. Hello. Good evening.
Good evening, God.
Good evening.
This is the supernumerary in the platoon when you train. Okay, good program. Keep it up. I know I leave you busy there now studying who was the supernumerary. Have a nice night, you and Natasha.
All right, thanks a lot. Somebody will recognize your voice and send the message. Good.
April 9th
Good evening.
was the funeral of Basil Davis, we've been told.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening. Sorry, excuse me.
Radio.
Sorry. That's you and Natasha work like archaeologists here, right?
Say again?
Actually, you and Natasha work like archaeologists. So I know the kind of information you're coming up with. But what I would like to say is that this is so interesting. But I feel strongly that there are some interesting people who are like acting behind the scenes, and their names are not coming up. And I'm glad that this guy, Haynes, called as a previous member of NUFF.
Yes.
That he might be able to help with this part of my concern.
Okay.
Because there were names like Joe Young. There were names like, what's my name? Michael Alves, right? There was a big name like Michael Alexander who represented big people in these scenes. And the fact that the freedom fighters, right, they were subversive elements, right? And having some serious connection with the communist people, Cubans, Russians, whatever, having books, documents on people like Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, and so on. So young also, Michael Alves also. I would like to know, what part these big names and maybe others would have had to play in influencing NUFF. 1. 2 is that the Ministry of Planning and Development, who is responsible for the Heritage Trust, who are responsible for Nelson Island, to the best of my knowledge, they will have a book on the history of Nelson Island, which comes from the indentured laborers, the Indians, even way back, 1970. So if it is, you all could try and get in some of the information from even the Ministry of Planning and Development concerning these big names. I think it would be a big help. And you also mentioned the Military Museum. So this is such a wonderful package I'm talking about in terms of getting information to inform the public as to this very important aspect of our history. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for calling.
Good evening.
Hello?
Good evening.
Yeah. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Oh, the phone, I'll get a little problem. The headset in the phone showing, and I don't know if before I get a little problem with it. Yeah, what I was called to explain about is concerning, I heard this man, how you call him, this guy, the fellow who, what's his name again, boy? He was explaining something. He said that most of the people in the public service was African working, but in the private thing, well, he didn't say about the private, but my view is that the people in the private, they wasn't hiring plenty black people in the private section, and in the private employment, and so that makes me go back to when Eric Williams say for independence, he say that when to get employment with the private sector, and he mentioned it, he repeated it, he said, and also to get in public and in private, and he repeated it in private. So maybe he wasn't really doing as how we speak, how we preach it. If you understand what I mean, he wasn't really walking the talk then at the time. So probably they must get a little discounted and decide that thing because it's private, but for all the public section, it was African people was working. So it wasn't to say that African people wasn't getting work in the public section, Public thing is it just was in the private and the white minority the private section, and that's what the problem was.
Thanks.
You understand?
Thanks.
Yeah. Take care.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening, guys, and Natasha.
Somebody just remind me about Tripper Antoine.
About Beverly June.
Pardon?
Yes.
I want to give you a little thing on Beverly and Jennifer. Beverly and Jennifer, they were classmates. They went to school, primary school, Eastern Girl. And then Beverly went on, Jennifer went on to Bishop's, and Beverly went to St. Martin. Kind of that thing, but Beverly, the father was a headmaster, and he was a very, very strict man.
Very strict?
They could not come to school where they have comb, like how children had the comb they hear now, and wherever. And they could not have given any trouble in school. Jennifer was a quiet one. She was more like a bookie. She would go in a corner with her book, and the more you see, they're smiling, and you're seeing she teeth, But there wasn't miserable trend. Beverly was the one who used to talk more. But the father grew them up from Gonzales, and they went on. I understand what boyfriend thing that get them involved in that.
Okay.
You understand?
So they were influenced by their group that they joined?
Yeah, boyfriend thing now.
Right.
In UE and wherever.
Okay.
But there was no problem children. There was children that the father tried best and go them up. And then when we come entrance and move on, we kind of lose things because they cannot leave the school and come back next school from school to home. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we lose contact and then we the thing back, and then after I hear about this thing, and then one day I saw them in St. Joseph, something, and they was talking, and I didn't too dig it, so I didn't think, but they were very good children. They grew up well. The father was the principal of St. Philip, right on the hill there, St. Philip Primary School. I think the mother had died, you know. Yeah, it's so long, you understand? And they were good children.
Okay.
And then, well, Jennifer went on. She was in Pandora, Kamala, Governor Jennifer Jones Tunaham. That's the girl, you know.
Yes, that's so. Jennifer
Right,
Jones
yeah.
Tunaham.
And she married and whatever, but they were good children. Good children. Wasn't problem children again. Problem. So I and all was shocked as a classmate when I hear about this thing. But then I remember waiting Beverly till my time. You understand? But if the boyfriend and girlfriend say, see, parents have to really watch the children because sometimes you don't know what they're getting when they're getting into shock. You understand?
All right, my friend.
Check on that. And Basil, I from Basil was my neighbor.
Okay.
Basil Davis. Well, the whole family thing and they migrate and wherever, and just one or two here. It was a real sad thing. You understand?
Right.
A real sad thing. I didn't think he was in that, real sad thing, but he just intervened and he gave it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay then, God.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we have more names here. Zorples, Gubby, Twinkle Toes, Joe Ball, Chiwis, and of course somebody said in Tripper. Well, Mr. Amnat have some more names, so he said he got 300 something names, so we'll have those to share with you.
I've heard Joe Ball before.
Yeah, that was Young, Mr. Young. Good evening.
Okay.
Hello, good evening. Hello.
Yes, God, and Natasha.
Good evening.
I'm glad that Clemens calling, and when you hear his version, you're going to jump. Because there's a tendency to treat enough people as though they're bandits.
Okay.
20 years ago, about 20 years ago, with a conversation with Jennifer, she told me vividly that when the soldiers came out over the hill to Jobe and the posse, Jennifer Beverly was shot in the face. They took her, there is enough members, put her under a green blanket, a camouflage, and left her there. Jennifer Beverly and Jennifer was captured and later the soldiers shot Beverly under the blanket. When you hear the advantages taken with these superior weapons, you'll see who the heroes and who the villains in the civil exercise. Right?
All right, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Yes, folks. So, thank you for joining. If you're just joining us, you missed a whole lot this evening. But thank you for those who continue to contribute on our Independency Facebook page and 95.5 reference Facebook page and Rise Maximum Radio's page. Let's take another call quickly. Remember, we have coming up at 8 o'clock Anglican hour. Good evening, sir.
The teacher is still alive, you know.
Who is this?
The teacher who was on the bank robbery.
She's still alive, Andrea.
Yes,
Yeah.
and she went and get a degree when she was in jail. She studied. She went to Jamaica.
Okay. Lovely.
Anytime you're ready, I could carry her and show you where she lives. I'm a personal friend.
Well,
we can't
ask her to call
really
us now. You know, we can't do this. We have to do the social distancing thing now. But if you could ask us,
if you have a number for her, we'd love to give her a call.
Okay.
All right.
So you can get in touch with Garth and share the number if you can, please.
Okay, I have the number.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And to all members, serving members of the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment, Coast Guard, Air Guard, you name it. You know, I always ask of you all to do just one thing. Cherish what you have, love where you are, and give it your heart and soul. These men who we recorded here all were committed soldiers and they played their part. And one thing I would like you all to do for me, please. You see, veterans, one day you will become a veteran too. And you hear stories from time to time how young soldiers, and I understand it happened in all arms of the protective service. Remember, these men served, they wore the same, they cut from the same cloth, let's say. And they come in camp, 9 out of 10 times they come to knock no ration. They come on business. And maybe you should, pay them a little more respect now. Show them a little more regard, because these fellas, and they served under, the conditions were different back then. We didn't have no air-conditioned guard room and air-conditioned vehicle and all this kind of thing. Our air conditioners rolling the flap of the canvas up the side and hope that it didn't rain. That was we air conditioned. And these men came through all of that and paved the way for you now to take up the baton and serve the colors. So try and show veterans a little more respect, as they do in other countries. They come in camp, man, be happy to serve them. If Captain John Jobe go in camp, in any camp, every soldier should know who that is. And take him through the steps, whatever he wants, and make sure he has a good experience. Cherish your veterans, because they would have paved the way for where you are today. And you hear how many people died or bled, especially for you to enjoy what you're enjoying today. Think about it. Good evening. Let's take final set up. Let's take one more. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
I'll give you something to think about.
Package you're supposed to call you a set up man.
If any of this 40, 60 meter mortar shell hit any vehicle in that column, what would have happened?
You wouldn't have been able to find them.
That is correct. So between the two white men and Commander William, they believe they have thought it well correctly.
Right.
Because of people shooting at the hills and shooting it up. I know if they hit one vehicle, that's what they said would have happened.
Yes.
Yeah, it would have been
people not giving a single thought about that.
carnage. Yep.
Yeah, it would have been serious carnage. But thank you very much, Akit.
Okay.
Thanks so much for calling. And folks, that's where we have to leave it. Thank you very much once again for giving us this opportunity. Love you on Facebook, Sandra Watson and the crew on Facebook. Gerald,
we'll post this video, so you'll have it to view from later tonight.
Yes. So thank you, folks, once again for participating in this trip down memory lane. And as I said, as much as we can bring the information to you and recreate that history, we will do it, because I am enjoying it. I'm learning things that I should have learned since I was a recruit. However, it didn't happen, and I'm sure for you serving members and retired, you learning stuff too as well, and you the members of the public. God bless you all. Remember, follow the instructions, be safe, wait. No more parties, please. We have 4 children now without parents. Think about it. For what? A drink and a night out when you're supposed to be home? Think of what you're doing. God bless you all. Have a great week. Join us again next Sunday for another edition of Our Independency right here on I-95.5 FM. Up next, Anglican Hour. Take care.